G'day, I'm Sean and welcome back to the CarExpert Podcast. After last week's VFAX dive, we thought we'd just keep it a little bit tighter this week. We've got Josh joining us. How are you, Josh?
Good, thanks for having me back again.
Yeah, it's been a while. But, you've got something on your lip, mate. You didn't clean before you came on the podcast.
Yeah, I try this every year and I can't seem to get it going. I'm hoping that maybe once I get to your age, I might be able to grow something of substance, but not yet.
Fair enough. Well, James seems to be having a little bit more success with it. How are you going, mate?
I'm just trying to stay out of the way of that sick burn that just happened in front of me, so I'm just going to stay out of the firing line.
That's all right. Look, no matter what reason you grow a moustache for in November, Movember is a worthy cause. So I think it's a good thing. Now, you might notice we're still wearing poppies, even though Remembrance Day was last week, but because we're having to record this podcast in advance, the day that we're recording this is November the 11th, but you're watching this on or after the 18th of November.
Yeah, I didn't have one of my pop star style costume changes scheduled in.
I did it today. So anyway, just to clear anything up there, let's get into it. Today we're talking about Vanquish, Qashqai, manual cars. They do still exist. I was surprised to see there was this many, so we will get into that. But we're going to start off by taking a dive into the BYD Shark. I had to do it. It was either that or get a copyright strike for doing the Jaws music, so I think we'll just stick with the puns. Josh, you went out to Broken Hill, ironically Mad Max desert country, to have a swim with the Shark, didn't you?
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of water where I went.
No, I can't imagine.
Sure. Yeah, we went to Broken Hill a couple of weeks ago now for the official launch of the BYD Shark. And it was an interesting place to hold it, not just because there's no water, but because Broken Hill had some power issues over the last probably few weeks. And we experienced one of those while we were there. So
not with the car?
No, not with the car. The car was providing all the power.
Oh, right.
Which came in handy, actually.
Okay, so, it is an odd place to launch a vehicle, especially a vehicle like that. And I guess, was this BYD trying to say, hey, look how rugged our vehicle is?
Yes, because they also supplied a Kubra hats to everyone who attended the event.
And you didn't wear that today? Oh, come on. Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so look, we've heard a lot about the Shark. I think the one thing we all want to know is how it actually drives in Australia. Because we've heard people how they drive it in Mexico, how it drives in China, but what's it actually like here on the local roads?
I was really impressed. We had to get up at 5 a.m. the morning after the launch to take the cars out, and we got a mix of driving conditions. So we took them on some sealed surfaces and then a bit of off-roading up to a sunrise viewing point, where we use the vehicle to load functions to brew our morning coffees using the Sharks, which was a nice way to finish up. But yeah, the performance was outstanding. I don't often get out of a ute with a grin on my face from driving pleasure, but it did happen in the Shark. And it was able to handle all the off-road surfaces we tackled, and the interior is really plush by ute standards. Yeah,
right. I mean, I think we sort of expected that it's sort of BYD have been setting a bit of a trend with the luxury interiors. But the drivability, I think, is a surprise. And I'm going to just throw this vision up on screen. You took it. I don't know whether it's you in the car or you just filming someone else in the car, being an absolute hooligan doing donuts in the dirt with the Shark.
They gave us an abandoned airstrip and, you had to do it.
Okay, fair enough.
We cut some donuts and did a couple of acceleration runs up and down the runway. And it was a lot of fun.
Now, one thing I have to ask about is the power outputs, because the claim is 325, but I've heard rumours that maybe it's not quite putting out that much power. Have we got any clarification on what the actual local power figures are for it now that it's actually here?
So 321 kilowatts is the official final number. That'll be on all the spec sheets. And on the night of the presentation, I think they might have input some of the overseas numbers. So they had 290 kilowatts, but it is 321 and 650 Newton meters.
Okay, well, when we get the car, I think we'll try and get it dynoed and actually test that, because I'll be very curious to see whether it can consistently output that number, because it is a fully electric drivetrain, isn't it? But it can get some assistance to the front wheels from the petrol motor. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. It feels very much like an electric car right up to about freeway speeds, and that's when you start to notice the petrol motor.
And then in terms of off-roading, what was it like? It doesn't have a low-range gearbox because it doesn't have, I guess, traditional drive shafts and axles. What's it actually like when you start doing some of that trickier off-roading stuff?
Well, that's the thing. We just kind of left the cars in drive and let them do their thing. And we didn't have any issues. I mean, we didn't take on any really steep gradients or anything like a river crossing. You wouldn't want to go too deep, even though it's called the Shark. But yeah, it was able to scramble up, some rocky hills quite easily, and no one reported any issues.
Okay, well...
I have a question.
Oh, yeah, no, please.
So speaking of figures, one of the big figures that came out of that launch was the pricing, which you announced to everyone on Instagram in your hat. But can you tell us more about the pricing? Maybe we can talk a little bit about the positioning of it relative to a segment.
Yeah, so $57,990 before on-road costs was the final price given for the single variant that'll be arriving, and that was, I think, lower than most of our predictions. I think people, given the information that was provided leading up to the launch, were probably thinking around the 60 mark, and then they dipped a little bit further below that. So it undercuts like Ranger XLT, mid-spec Hiluxes, and you're getting a lot more on the spec sheet for your money, and that powertrain is capable of a lot more than those cars, except for towing capacity, which is the one big drawback that people have found with the Shark so far.
Well, I mean, I think this is, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, the Shark definitely seemed like it's more of a lifestyle vehicle than like a trade vehicle. And I guess only coming out with one spec being a top spec, that's probably what they're marketing at. Do you know if there's sort of going to be lower tier specs that come out that are more, I guess, trade oriented? Yeah,
so they're looking at that. The spec that we've got now is definitely going to be the top, and then they'll come in with something cheaper later on. Whether that is, a fully bare bones worksite vehicle, I'm not sure. But yeah, there's room to go lower. Yeah, cab chassis, rear wheel drive. I mean, that's...
Yeah, single motor, rear wheel drive, cab chassis.
Yeah.
20 grand.
I think that, with a couple of power outlets in the back, I think that'd be all right. Look, let's swim away from the Sharks because it is time for Wong. James Wong, because you went all the way to Sardinia. I remembered it. I remembered where you went. And then you squeezed yourself into the new Aston Martin Vanquish. So let's start off with the important question. Was it easy to get in and out of?
It actually wasn't too bad. Okay. The new Vanquish is quite large and actually has, I think it's an 80 mil extension in the wheelbase compared to the DB12, which I also recently drove. And the Vanquish it's quite a substantial car. Like, a lot of sports cars, because they're so low slung, look quite compact in images and they don't look like they'd be very big. But then, when we had a fleet of 8 of them on this wave of the media launch, and walking up to them, they're quite imposing. It's quite a big, wide car, and it's got a bit of length to it as well. So it looks pretty... it's not a shrinking violet by any means.
No, I mean, it should... Well, I guess the idea is it has to scare the bad guy that Bond's chasing, right?
You'd think so, yeah. I imagine this might show up in the next film if they're working on it, because the DBS made an appearance in one of the last films, so it wouldn't surprise me if the Vanquish now becomes the new, Bond thing and carries the torch from the original Vanquish in Die Another Day. So... Ooh. Definitely should. Well, it's beautiful enough to make an appearance. You could almost replace the Bond girl with one.
Ooh, big call, big call. We will see. But no, what's it actually like to drive? Because I mean, it is everything I guess I certainly think an Aston should be. It's 2 doors, front V12 engine, rear wheel drive. Is it everything that you hope an Aston Martin will be?
Yeah, so to provide some context, the Vanquish, the original Vanquish, is actually my favourite car of all time. So to get put on this launch was like a dream come true for me. And I was hoping that I wasn't going to be disappointed by the drive experience, because obviously, singing V12s and all that kind of thing has been a signature of the Aston Martin brand for a really long time. And, moving to a smaller turbocharged unit and all the various things that come with, sound regulations, with exhausts, fuel economy standards and all that kind of thing. That's stuff that a lot of these brands have really had to contend with, and they almost run the risk of diluting their brand as a result. And so, you look with Aston Martin's current lineup, the DBX, the Vantage and the DB12 are all V8 only, and they're all Mercedes-AMG V8s. Now, while they are Mercedes-AMG sourced, there's a lot of reworking that goes into those cars. I think they quoted a figure of like 60% of componentry is adjusted or reworked by the Aston Martin team. So even though it's a technology partnership, they still do their best to make it their own. But the Vanquish is actually the first model in the range to get this new, extensively reworked, what Aston Martin calls actually all new V12 5.2 litre twin turbo that is sort of, it started life as maybe the V12 in the old DBS Superleggera. So it's a 5.2 litre V12, twin turbos. They preserved the bore and stroke measurements of that engine, and then apparently have thrown everything else out and redone it. So there's new turbos, there's various things that have been re-engineered, reworked, or all new componentry that basically what makes it what they call an all new engine. And it's pumping out 614 kilowatts and 1,000 Newton meters.
Oh, I mean, that's the kind of numbers you want from your Aston, right? Like, they should be ridiculous.
Yeah, and you think about it, not long ago, a naturally aspirated Aston was probably doing about 400 kilowatts and maybe, I don't know, 600, 650 Newton meters if you were lucky. And now we're getting these crazy numbers to the point where they've actually had to re-engineer the transmission to handle that torque because it's got an extra 200 Newton meters over the DB12. And so, yeah, like starting it up, I've done a couple of videos on our Instagram, and there's also a video on site on the review. And, it's still got this wonderful brassy, but also very smooth V12 exhaust note that is very different to, some of the V12s you get out of the Italian brands that almost mimic the F1 sounds of old, whereas this just sounds like a symphony of, brass instruments just singing to you as you hit the red line. And the way that the Vanquish delivers its power is really interesting, because you see those numbers and you expect, this is like a 2.5 second 0 to 100 car, but you have to remember this is driving the rear wheels only. It's a gentleman's express. It's the ultimate GT, as Aston describes it. And so it's really, they've sort of shaped the torque curve and the power delivery to ensure that sort of linearity that you might expect of a naturally aspirated engine. And so it does its best work at the top end. I think it's got a 6,500 RPM red line, and it makes peak power at 6,000 RPM. So it sort of crescendos with all its torque, and then you hit that power band. It's got this relentless pull to it, which was really cool to experience. And it sort of hits you in the back. We've sort of become accustomed to electrified vehicles giving you an instant torque shove. But even though it gives you that hit in the back, it's a very progressive but very, very strong push in the back that just sort of doesn't stop. And yeah, it was just an incredible car to drive. Like the outside, it feels quite substantial inside. It's a very, very wide car. And for those like myself who aren't necessarily familiar with Sardinian roads, it's a little island off the coast of Italy that has very, very winding, spaghetti-like roads. And these roads are often frequented by Fiat 500s and Pandas. And there were various points on the drive where, let's just say the national speed limit is 90 kilometers an hour. And I had a lot of these little Pandas tailgating me doing 100 and over because they wanted me to hurry up.
Yeah, a bit of this out the window.
Yeah. I was trying not to look too closely in the rearview mirror because I didn't want to get upset by any of the gestures they might have been making at me. But yeah, just what a car. And one thing I love about the Italians is that they have such big, petrol head culture. And so we're driving through some of these little country towns in this, random island off the coast of Italy, and you drive through the main strip and people come running out onto the streets, they're pointing, they're like, what's this? And even though it's an Aston Martin and not like a Ferrari Lamborghini, there's just such appreciation for the art form that is some of these, modern cars. And, it feels so special. And I was going to say it makes you feel like $1 million, but in Australia it is pretty much $1 million to have one in your driveway. So I guess you're getting what you pay for.
Absolutely. Look, there are people, and probably people like you, who are of a bit of Spanish descent, and Fernando Alonso is currently their favourite driver, and they would be very happy to have one of those.
Absolutely, in their driveway. Yeah. And I imagine that, this engine and this platform that the Vanquish sits on is going to be the basis of a number of cool special editions. Aston Martin loves doing the bespoke sort of style things. Speaking of Fernando Alonso, he had it wasn't the Velour, it was the other one, the Valiant, which was not
a Chrysler, just to be clear.
Yeah, it wasn't a Chrysler Valiant by any means, but it was based on the old DBS 770, but it had a 6-speed manual transmission, bespoke bodywork, and like racing seats and stuff. And it just looks ridiculously cool. And there was also the Velour, which I think Gordon Ramsay has one, and it's a similar thing, but a similar sort of look, but a different car as well. And I imagine that this new V12 will serve as the basis for a lot of hero cars from the Aston stable in the coming years. So yeah, really cool stuff.
I look forward to the Lance edition, which is already beached and or crashed before you get it. So something to look forward to. So I guess you currently own a Golf GTI or Vanquish. It's kind of a no-brainer, right? You'd have your Golf GTI, right?
It is a really, really tough decision, but I would probably choose the Vanquish, and maybe we can bring up the little video of the car being driven now, or the walk around, so that people can actually hear it for themselves.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Let's play that now.
I might give it a little bit of beans just so you can hear for yourself what a V12 Aston in 2024 sounds like. Try not to hit this stray cat on the road. Alrighty, so let's do a little loop-de-loop. There we go. Okay, we're back on it. I'll pop it back into second, and I want you to listen to this, because this is the piece de resistance of the whole thing. Oh, I've been driving this all day, and I don't think I'll ever get sick of it. It's just intoxicating. So I'm going to have to sadly throw back to you guys in the studio now. But yeah, stay tuned for the full written on the website.
All right, so I want to talk about the Nissan Qashqai for a moment. I don't know, we've just talked about...
It's a very strange segue, We've swam out of the Mediterranean into the Channel, because they're made in Sunderland, I guess.
Yeah, why not? Look, Nissan very kindly loaned us a Nissan Qashqai e-Power for about 6 months as a long-termer to try out. Now, I've been driving it most of the time. It's been a production vehicle, but you guys have also had a drive. So I just want to talk about it for a moment, because Toyota, top of the pops at the moment, RAV4, killing it in the hybrid sales. A lot of hybrid vehicles right up in the charts. Hybrid is, I guess, on the move in Australia. And the Qashqai e-Power, it's sort of a different kind of hybrid. It's almost kind of like the Shark in that it's actually an electric car with a generator on board. The little petrol motor just is purely there to charge a battery. And I've loved driving it, but I want to talk to you guys and get a sense of what you guys think of the Qashqai, because I know you've both spent a bit of time in it. So Josh, as our special guest, I'll start with you. I mean, what are your thoughts on the Qashqai? Because it's very different to any other hybrid that you can buy.
Yeah, so I took it for one long journey from Lang Lang back to the office.
Long drive.
After a long day of work out there. And I remember just being really tired at the end of that day and just wanting a nice relaxing trip home. And that's exactly what I got. The Qashqai e-Power, it was so quiet, so efficient. It had the massage seats, which I wasn't expecting, because I didn't check the spec sheet before I got in that car. And it had these quilted massage seats with heating, and I just remember feeling so comfortable and really, surprised by how pleasant and plush the inside of that car was.
They're real easy drive. I do have to knock the seats back a little bit. I think they could do with cooling options, because the last few days have been quite sunny and hot, and every time I got in it, my back is just broken out in sweat. They're a bit nasty in that regard.
Yeah,
but
the black leather as well doesn't help.
Black leather's not great, but yes, very comfortable. Massaging is it's a nice driver alert sort of function. It sort of keeps you awake rather than relaxes you. But James, I know you've actually spent a fair bit of time in various Qashqais. I mean, what is your thought on this one?
Yeah, I think the e-Power tech is really cool, because while it isn't necessarily quite as efficient as a Toyota hybrid that is all about efficiency, I think what the Qashqai e-Power does really well is give you an experience that builds on the performance of the petrol one while also enhancing efficiency. And the way that it works is really interesting. So the engine, there's a turbocharged engine up front that actually isn't directly connected to the wheels. It's hooked up to an inverter and motor generator, and then sends power to the front electric motor, which makes 140 kilowatts. And for the most part, it does feel like an electric vehicle, as you said. And so there are some benefits with that in terms of the drivability. It's really immediate in how it responds. It's very quiet. It's very refined. It's also got active sound cancellation, so it plays an alternative frequency through the speakers to drown out road noise. And there is a good... there's a tangible benefit in that, because I definitely noticed it, because I did the launch of the normal Qashqai and the e-Power, and definitely noticed a difference in terms of the NVH, or noise vibration harshness, for those who aren't familiar with the acronym. And I just think the Qashqai is a really, really great car for people, and they might not even know it, because it's a great size. I know it's classified as a small SUV, but it's always The Qashqai's always sort of been a segment buster. It's a little bit bigger than small, but not quite as big as medium. And it's sort of got that really space efficient packaging that's quite common amongst a lot of Japanese and European brands, in that they're sort of at the mercy of form factor restrictions in their respective markets. And so, you think about Europe, which for the longest time has been all about very compact cars. And even though the Qashqai it looks small on Australian roads, in Europe it's actually quite a big thing. And so you can actually fit 4 adults on there quite comfortably. You get a lot of high-end features in a fairly small car that you don't see a lot of at the moment. Like the interior and the feature set is actually really premium. And
well, that's one of the things, right? Because Japanese cars, and especially we talk Toyota, like the interiors are the letdown of the car, and the Qashqai does not feel like that. And I think this is part of that Mitsubishi Nissan alliance where they're updating these passenger interiors to be really quite comfortable and premium. And it definitely gives you a sense that the car is more expensive and more fancy than it is, for sure.
Yeah, and it also just looks really nice. Like, it's got this really wonderful bullet front, and then a really nice sharp rear, and the lighting signatures look really good. I wish that you had the option of different wheels in Australia, because there was a larger option, which probably would be to the detriment of ride quality. But I remember when this generation was first revealed, it had these wonderful, I think there were 19 or 20 inch wheels on the top spec models, which it made it look like a concept, because it's got really thin headlights and tail lights, big wheels, and you've got some really nice bright color options with this wonderful quilted leather interior, and it just looks really special. And then when you look at it's on the higher side of the segment in terms of pricing, like 51 plus on-road costs for this e-power version, which is about $4,000 more than the equivalent petrol, which is already on the higher side of the segment as well. It is a lot of money, but when you think about what you get and how it drives, it really does set itself apart from even something like a Toyota Corolla Cross, which is effectively the same size and class of vehicle. It definitely feels like a much nicer car than that.
Yeah, and it'll do nearly 1,000 Ks to a tank of fuel, which is pretty impressive. I think I just went to Ballarat last weekend, came back and refueled in Ballarat before I came back, 4.8 litres per 100 coming down the freeway. And like traditionally EVs on a motorway are terrible for efficiency, but this thing wasn't. Like, it's very impressive the way it uses it. A couple of gripes I do have to nitpick at it. Glad they didn't put the bigger wheels on, because I have done a tyre on that. I'm going through a pothole, and the tyres are quite expensive because they're EV tyres, so that's something to keep in mind. The cameras are shocking. Like, this big screen is lovely. Apple CarPlay looks fantastic. The cameras are atrocious, especially when it's like that sort of dusky light, really bad to see out of. And yeah, just the leather, just cooling seats, or like a suede seat. I think they're my biggest nitpicks with it.
Well, your prayers may have been answered, because there is a new model coming very, very soon. We're still waiting for full details of the new range, but there is an upgrade to cameras that come with this, and it's got like a new 3D projection function. Like,
I don't care for those. I really don't.
But the camera quality has been upgraded to facilitate that. Good. And if the new Duke is anything to go by, there will be an N Sport grade that is going to have like the sporty, suede trims throughout. So I reckon that might address both of the things that you've complained about, because otherwise it's a pretty good car.
Yeah, I'd struggle to fault it. And I'm really interested because it's only front wheel drive, and we're about to get an X-Trail e-Power, which is the all-wheel drive, so electric drive to the front and the rear. So be curious to see how that feels compared to this. So something to look forward to. Those, we will have updates on those as we go forward. But for now, you can read about the Qashqai at the CarExpert website, and I'll put a link in the description below. All right, so I was quite surprised to find out there is quite a long list of manual cars still available in Australia. I assumed that it was down to like 3, but it turns out we managed to make a list of the 10 cheapest. So I'm just going to run through them quickly. I'll just get your thoughts on each of them. Kia Picanto, no real surprise, they still make that in a manual, right?
No, not at all. And it's probably best served as a manual.
Suzuki Ignis, same sort of story, right? As the Picanto?
Yeah, I haven't actually driven a manual Ignis. I've only driven the CVT one. But if it's anything like other small Japanese manuals, I reckon it would be probably the best way to experience one. And the Ignis is getting on a little bit. It's lacking a bit of tech compared to rivals in the segment, but I guess it's quite a space-efficient little package, and it comes in some really bright colours. So if you want something a little bit different, it's definitely one to consider if you want something that's cheap and easy to live with.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of cheap, easy to live with Japanese cars, Suzuki Swift, but not just Suzuki Swift, the hybrid, a manual hybrid.
Yeah, cheapest hybrid on the list by a long way, because there's nothing else that's hybrid on the list. And if you're in the niche market of manual hybrids, then you can't go wrong with the Swift. I love the new Swift hybrid. It's really efficient. They've updated the interior to be a lot nicer than previous models, and yeah, I think it's a winner.
Yeah, I mean,
value.
Under 25 grand like on the road is pretty impressive. Mitsubishi ASX, why do they still make this car? Honestly, this car is about 1,000 years old.
Yeah, it feels like it. No, the base AXX, I think some of these cars are actually better, some of these older ones and value-driven ones, the best models are often the lower ones. And, a base ASX with a manual, I think it still has wheel covers, which is kind of cool.
Lovely.
So it's all like, but it's got like the old this Lancer and Galant style wheel covers. And I don't know, there's something kind of charming about that and humbling. You get into a nice basic car, little crossover, so you've got the space, and it's on easy to live with steel wheels and wheel caps, so you don't have to worry about curbing your alloys for people who are learning to drive.
I just picture hitting the speed bump too hard and it flies off.
Yeah, you see them rolling off into the distance. But to be honest, that might actually be the best ASX you can buy.
There you go, you heard it here first, folks. Mazda 2, Josh, I know you've driven this in the manual.
Yes, very briefly. I drove the pure hatch, which is, this cheapest variant. And I think a bit of a trend that you'll find with the list is that it is the older cars that have still got the manuals in them. So aside from the new Swift Hybrid, which is a new model, quite a few of these are getting on now. And you can feel that in the Mazda 2. Some of the tech is a little bit on the older side, especially infotainment-wise. But it still drives really well. You find those cheaper, smaller Mazda models, you get more connection in the driving experience than you do in a lot of other cars at that price point.
There you go. Well, just run through a couple of these. Hyundai Venue, Suzuki Vitara, Suzuki Swift. It seems Suzuki make a manual and everything because the list is rounded out with the Suzuki Jimny, which is obviously best served as a manual because the automatic does not have enough ratio to pull itself along. I think the manual is definitely the pick of the Jimny there. The one that really stands out, and all of these cars are under $34,000, which is the
drive away.
Drive away, yes.
Yes.
The one to point out is the Toyota Hilux. Okay, it's not a Hilux as you might think. So James, maybe spell this one out a little.
Yeah, so I'm going to be careful with how I describe this because I copped some flack a couple of weeks ago when we mentioned this same car, and apparently I have no idea how it works. But the Hilux Workmate 2.7, so it's a base petrol car, single cab chassis, low riding 4x2 Hilux, which I'm assuming are bought by either apprentices or traffic controllers and things like that. Or it's got I think it's got a good payload on it too. It's
over a ton.
Yeah, so more for payload than it is for towing because that engine is quite entry level. But yeah, the cheapest manual, and it's a Ute. It's the only Ute in the list. And you can probably see why Toyota might have the 4x2 Ute market under its thumb, because it's stuff like this where, that's a base Hilux, now that they've done an array of tech advancements in that range for over a period of time, that, for someone who doesn't necessarily need a 4x4 or, the diesel engine or whatever, that's got a lot of capability and it is very focused on what it needs to do. I'm addressing that because that's what someone said, that I didn't understand the intended purpose. It does do the intended purpose thing, but its intended purpose is very, very specific. And in a world where, and in a market where a lot of Australians are buying lifestyle utes and need their car to do everything, this may not satisfy that, which is probably why you see the SR5 is the favourite amongst consumers. But it's pretty cool to see something like that cheap.
There you go. So I'll put a link in the description to the full list, and the guys have done a little detail on each of the cars. So there you go. You can still get a fun little manual car for under $30,000 or slightly over if you want a Swift Sport, a Hilux or a Jimny. But I think, honestly, the pick of those is Suzuki Swift Hybrid Manual. That's my pick out of that list. I think it's a ripper little car.
Great little car.
Yeah, I'm with you.
It's time for, I feel like we need a sting for these things. I'd love to get some classic radio style stings. But this week in automotive history, and as our special guest, Josh, what did you find this week in automotive history?
Yeah, so it took a bit of digging. I'm new to this segment, so I'll do my best. But what I came up with is on November 25th, 1960, which is, I think, the Sunday after this podcast will air, petrol sales were banned on Sundays in the US because of an oil crisis. So President Nixon put a ban on, Sunday petrol sales for about 5 months, I think. And the thought point that came out of that for me was, as we trend towards electrification, when will petrol sales be banned for good, if ever? I think it's a very open question. We don't know, but it was something interesting that came out of that little historical moment.
Yeah, I mean, we do know history tends to repeat. There's every possibility it'll happen. I don't think it'll happen in America because they all like going to church on a Sunday and they all need their pickup trucks to do that, and they all need to fuel them daily for that. So I also don't think their future president is going to be keen on banning petrol sales. But this isn't a political podcast, so we'll avoid that topic.
Yeah, next.
James, what did you find out happened this week in automotive history?
So actually on this day in 2013, so just over a decade ago, the third generation Mini debuted at the company's Oxford plant in England. So
the third generation, but this
Yes.
thing's been around since the 60s.
well, the third generation of the new Mini.
Oh, okay.
So the new Mini, which started life under BMW ownership in the very early 2000s, if
Right,
not
okay.
the 2000,
Yep.
was in its third generation as of 2013. So it was dubbed F56 is the model code. And now we have the new one, which is technically the fourth generation, but a very, 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 very heavy revision of this one that debuted a decade ago.
And a very, very heavy price increase, I think, as well, to come with it. Yeah, so we'll gloss over that. A lot of people like them. We've got a gentleman that works in the office here, Anthony, who loves his Countryman, I think he has.
Yeah, he's a Countryman JCW.
Yep, so they exist. Those people exist. They're out
I
there.
love a Mini as well. It's just, they're quite expensive.
Yeah, quite expensive. But look, mine is the opposite of a Mini. On November 21, 1970, Ford Motor Company introduced the Boss 351. And the rest, they say, is history because it is one of the greatest V8 motors ever made. Very hard to find one, but I believe you can still get them in a crate these days because people still like to go drag racing. So I think that the 351, that started a lot of not just history in the States, but I think in Australia, because the Falcons got them, the XC, XA, XB, XC could get a 351. I think that there's a lot of love for that motor. So do you have a memory of the 351 that you would like to leave a comment about? Let us know. Leave a comment or write to us podcast at carexpert.com.au. But it wouldn't be a Car Expert podcast without our picks of the week.
We need
James?
a jingle for some of these
I know,
segments.
we really do.
Maybe
need the
I can
stinger
use
jingle.
Paul's recording booth and sing a jingle for you next time.
There
We'll see
we
how we
go.
go.
We do have karaoke coming up at our Christmas party, so maybe we could just knock a couple of recordings out then.
Yeah.
But what's your pick of the week, mate?
So I found a very interesting Instagram reel where these young guys took a current gen WRX, which I think has been whacked a few times for its almost crossover-y appearance, and basically tried to turn it into a JDM hero that previous WRX STIs are well known for. So they have a bright red example, and I think this is based in the US. So yeah, there's a bright red example. They take off the wheel arch cladding, if that's what we want to call it. Basically chuck it out the window and have colour matched versions put on. They put on a massive STI style rear wing and some, I think they're Rays alloys, or, some very typical JDM spec, like 5-arm, almost motorsport alloys. And it looks really, really cool. I think there's a suspension drop in there as well. And they put a Civic Type R badge on the back because, back in the day, everything was a Type something in JDM hot small car culture. So a really, really fun and interesting video to see how some people are modifying their cars.
As the, sorry, I'm just checking if Max is nodding in approval as the Subaru guy in the office, but no, there's a shake of the head. Okay, not approved.
Well, I was going to say, I hope it doesn't have the CVT, because that would be a real...
Oh, that'd be tragic, wouldn't it?
I think it's a manual. It would be a shame if they did all that work on the CVT one. Hey,
There we go. We just got a thumbs up from Max in the background. There we go. All right, Josh, what's your pick this week, mate?
So mine is on a similar thread of JDM. I found this on YouTube last week. It's a video of a 350Z drifting, allegedly filmed against a green screen, but I think it looks suspiciously like some country roads just out of Melbourne. And it's a video of a guy drifting a 350Z with narration done by an AI version of David Attenborough.
Oh, my Lord.
And it is magnificent. There's just so many elements to it. It's kind of, I forgot what the title was, but I think Planet Drift. So, Planet Earth, Planet Drift. Yep, check it out. And it's like 8 or 9 minutes of David Attenborough talking you through a 350Z hill run. You have to go and watch it because I can't do it justice.
All right, we'll put a link in the description so people can watch it. My pick this week is, this has to be fake, or it's part of filming of a movie, but someone's filmed out their balcony in Dubai, a F1 car racing through the street being chased by the Dubai police force in the Lamborghinis and stuff. and then it does like a quick whip around and doesn't drive into the gravel like Lance Stroll. It drives off down the road. But then the thing that made me think, oh, maybe this is fake, is that the police Lambos are like drifting after it. So maybe it's not real. But if it is real and you are the one driving that Formula One car, write to us, podcast@carexpert.com.au, because it's like, it takes you, remember the guy that drove the F1 car through Paris back in the day, like strapped the camera on his F1 car and drove it through Paris? It's kind of got a bit of that vibe to it. It may not be real, but it's still cool.
I think I've seen the video that you're talking about, and it is very interesting seeing some of these, because the Middle East is well known for its very high-end car culture, and some of the police forces there have some I think they had a Veyron at some point. So it's almost like Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, but in real life.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, he was at level 5 because the Lamborghinis are after him.
Yeah, exactly. But really cool stuff. And if it's real, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, who knows? Man, in that country, anything is possible, I think. So, look, that brings us to the end of the podcast this week. We are away currently, which is why we've pre-recorded this, filming an exciting project. Well, I'm away with Igor and Paul. These guys are busy working in the office. But do you have any upcoming launches or trips you got?
Well, I will actually be away at the time of airing because I'll be interstate driving the new electric Porsche Macan.
Oh, look out. There we go. They're talking about a car that divides opinions. Okay, well, do you have an embargo date on that yet?
I do somewhere, and I don't have it off the top of my head, but it'll probably be a week or so after driving it. But I think, like the Taycan, even though it will divide opinion as to whether fans of the brand think it's a valid Porsche or not, given what I know about the technology and what it means for the brand, how important it is, I'm really interested to see what it's like, because I loved driving the Taycan. So I'm hoping that I get a similar feeling with the Macan.
All right, well, we will talk about that on an upcoming episode of the CarExpert Podcast. If you haven't already subscribed to the YouTube channel, like I said, Shark videos are coming this week. Something very exciting. I can't give away any details, but make sure you subscribe, because it's going to be pretty cool seeing it race a Ford Ranger Raptor. I think that's it for this week, guys. Thanks, Josh, for joining us and taking the time out of your day.
I've got one last thing, just a disclaimer, because normally, you end with final comments. I've got a disclaimer. I do not endorse drifting on open public roads. I am assuming the footage that I just recommended is manufactured and in no way real.
Yes, filmed on a closed course with professional drivers, as they say, the little text on the bottom of an ad. That's it. Thank you so much for joining us this week, guys, and we'll see you next time on the CarExpert Podcast.